hosts will do battle for us.
Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments isn't just a movie, it's a monument. Released in 1956, it towered over Hollywood history with its scale, its spectacle, and its power to leave audiences in awe. Charlton Heston as Moses, Yul Brynner as Pharaoh, and Baxter as the beguiling Nefretiri. Together they turned scripture into cinema on a scale no one had dared attempt before. But behind the parted seas and fiery plagues was another story. A story of danger, ambition, strange accidents, and secrets Hollywood never expected to share. From directors collapsing on set, to hidden skulls inside the Angel of Death, to bizarre choices that echo all the way to modern pop culture, this epic carried more mysteries off-screen than most films could ever dream of. We're opening the vault and uncovering these explosive 20 weird facts you didn't know about the Ten Commandments, released in 1956. Fact 20. Cecil B. DeMille's near-death collapse. At 73, Cecil B. DeMille commanded the set like a general. From atop a towering ladder in the desert heat, he barked orders to thousands of extras until his chest seized with pain. The crew watched in horror as their legendary director nearly toppled. Rushed to the hospital, DeMille was told in no uncertain terms to stop. The doctors warned that another attack could be fatal. For most men, that would have been the end of the line. But DeMille wasn't most men. Just 2 days later, he returned to the set, climbed back up the ladder, and took the megaphone as if nothing had happened. His defiance became part of the movie's mythology, the director who refused to let death halt his vision. The film pressed forward, but the crew soon faced another chill. This time, it wasn't their leader collapsing, it was death itself, hidden in a cloud of green fog. 19. A skull hidden in the fog. The Angel of Death sequence is one of the film's most haunting images, a green mist sweeping silently through Egypt, claiming the firstborn. Audiences shuddered at the eerie stillness of it. But the fear wasn't only in the story. Effects artists hid the faint outline of a human skull inside the drifting fog. Most viewers never consciously noticed it, but their minds did. That subliminal image gave the scene an extra layer of dread. It was an early example of Hollywood using psychology to unsettle its audience. Not terror by what's seen, but by what lurks in the corner of perception. And if that ghostly skull made the crew uneasy, what came next was no illusion. It was a very real cobra, and it refused to stay in its place. 18. The escaped cobra. When Moses' staff transforms into a serpent, most directors would have used tricks or rubber props. DeMille refused. He wanted reality, so the crew brought in a live king cobra. Under the hot studio lights, the reptile hissed and coiled, perfect for Pharaoh's court. Then, in a flash, it broke free. The cobra slid across the set, scattering extras and sending crew members into a frenzy. Some bolted, others froze, terrified the snake might strike. Handlers finally cornered it, but not before chaos turned the palace of Egypt into a scene of real danger. For those who were there, the fear in that moment was far more authentic than anything written in the script. But if venom sent shockwaves of terror, the next plague would leave everyone laughing because Egypt's hailstorm wasn't made of ice at all. 17. The popcorn hailstorm. The plague of hail looks brutal on screen, stones crashing down, pounding Egypt under divine fury. But those icy missiles, they weren't ice at all. The effects crew painted popcorn white and dropped it in waves over the actors. Light enough not to injure anyone, cheap enough to reuse, it became the perfect stand-in for deadly hail. Between takes, the kernels were swept up, touched with paint again, and tossed back into the storm. Audiences thought they were watching God's wrath. The cast knew they were dodging recycled snacks. And while popcorn made for a clever trick, the parting of the Red Sea demanded something stranger. A miracle crafted not with stone or fire, but with gelatin. 16. The Red Sea was made of gelatin. The parting of the Red Sea remains one of cinema's greatest illusions. No CGI, no digital wizardry, just practical effects in 1956. To create the towering walls of water, Paramount engineers filled giant tanks with liquid thickened by gelatin. The mixture gave the water a heavy, otherworldly flow. When the footage was played in reverse, it looked like the sea itself was rising on command. It took months of experiments, endless failures, and vats of sticky gel, but the result became one of Hollywood's defining images. A kitchen ingredient turned into a biblical miracle. And yet, while the sea opened for Moses, the gates of Egypt slammed shut for one of Hollywood's brightest stars, Audrey Hepburn. 15. Audrey Hepburn's rejection. Few names carried as much elegance as Audrey Hepburn. For a time, she was even considered for the role of Nefretiri. Her poise, her beauty, her rising fame, it all seemed perfect. But DeMille had other ideas. In his casting notes, he scribbled a curt dismissal. Lovely, but not enough figure. Hepburn's slender frame, he decided, couldn't carry the heavy gowns and jeweled crowns he envisioned for Egypt's queen. So the part went to Anne Baxter, whose commanding presence matched DeMille's spectacle. Hepburn walked away, another reminder of how ruthlessly old Hollywood judged even its brightest stars. And while Hepburn's chance vanished quietly, DeMille's boldest publicity stunt would roar for decades, all the way to the steps of the US Supreme Court. 14. 4,000 stone tablets sparked a court battle. DeMille's vision didn't stop at the screen. To promote the film, Paramount built more than 4,000 stone monuments engraved with the Ten Commandments. They appeared across America in parks, outside courthouses, and even on church lawns. For years, they blended into the landscape, relics of a biblical blockbuster. But decades later, those stones ignited controversy. Civil liberties groups argued they blurred the line between faith and state. One Texas monument even reached the US Supreme Court in 2005. The verdict: it could stay, not as a religious symbol, but as part of American cultural history. A publicity stunt had become a legal precedent, and while those tablets stood firm, another echo of the film would thunder decades later, this time in the raw sound of heavy metal. 13. Metallica's Creeping Death inspiration. Nearly 30 years after the film's release, the Ten Commandments found new life in the unlikeliest of places, a California living room. Metallica's bassist Cliff Burton was watching the Angel of Death sequence when the creeping green mist swept across the screen. He muttered two words: creeping death. The phrase struck like lightning. Within days, James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich had turned it into a song, a thunderous anthem retelling the plagues in blistering metal. Audiences screamed "Die, die" at concerts, never knowing the track's roots lay in DeMille's biblical spectacle. From the Red Sea to rock arenas, the Ten Commandments left its mark. But if Metallica gave the film new power, Anne Baxter gave it scandal. Her performance as Nefretiri was bold, and some thought far too bold. 12. Nefretiri's controversial portrayal. Anne Baxter played Nefretiri with fire in her eyes, seductive, commanding, impossible to ignore. On screen, she wasn't just Pharaoh's queen, she was temptation itself. But not everyone welcomed her performance. Religious audiences bristled, accusing DeMille of turning sacred scripture into Hollywood lust. Some critics praised Baxter's allure, others called it scandalous. The debate spilled beyond theaters, fueling both outrage and fascination. DeMille didn't mind. Controversy meant attention, and attention meant ticket sales. Baxter's sultry portrayal became part of the legend. Too bold for some, unforgettable for others. And while her gaze divided audiences, another sequence never made it to them at all. An entire plague that DeMille filmed, then buried forever. 11. The Lost Plague of Frogs. Determined to capture every biblical detail, DeMille staged the Plague of Frogs. Hundreds of slimy creatures were released onto Pharaoh's gleaming palace set, leaping across thrones and costumes. On camera, it was meant to be chilling, nature overwhelming Egypt in divine punishment. But test audiences didn't shudder. They laughed. The frogs bounced clumsily, turning terror into slapstick. Embarrassed, DeMille cut the entire sequence. Weeks of work vanished, leaving the plague of frogs lost to history. But while the frogs were erased, one small detail survived, stitched into Moses' costume with uncanny accuracy. 10. Moses' robe coincidence. When Charlton Heston appeared as Moses, he wore a striking robe striped in red, black and white. To the designers, it was simply bold costume design that looked dramatic in Technicolor. Years later, Historians noticed something uncanny. Those exact colors were the ceremonial hues of the Levite priests, the very tribe Moses belonged to in biblical tradition. No one on the crew had researched this. It was pure chance, yet it gave Heston's Moses an aura of authenticity that no script could have planned. And while Heston carried history in his robes, Yul Brynner carried a quieter secret, a battle fought not on set, but in the gym. 9. Yul Brynner's secret gym sessions. Standing beside Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner worried he might look small. Heston stood tall and broad, built like the very image of a prophet. Brynner, though powerful on screen, was noticeably shorter. Determined not to be overshadowed, he trained relentlessly during production. He lifted weights, did pull-ups, and pushed his body until his frame matched the authority of Pharaoh Ramesses. By the time cameras rolled, Brynner's presence radiated confidence. Viewers never saw the insecurity, only a king whose strength rivaled Moses. And while Brynner reshaped himself for the role, the treasures of Pharaoh's court found their own strange second life in the distant future of Star Trek. 8. Pharaoh's props in Star Trek. The palaces of Egypt gleamed with golden goblets, jeweled vessels, and ornate treasures. After filming Wrapped, those props didn't vanish. They were stored away in Paramount's warehouses. Decades later, they resurfaced in the unlikeliest setting, the futuristic world of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Sharp-eyed fans noticed Pharaoh's cups and jars sitting casually aboard starships. What once symbolized the glory of Ramesses now decorated the 24th century. It was a reminder that in Hollywood, nothing is wasted. Yesterday's empire can become tomorrow's galaxy. And while the props traveled into outer space, the film's miracles were crafted here on Earth, with help from an unexpected source, Disney. 7. Disney artists behind the miracles. When audiences watched fire race across the sky or God's hand etch glowing letters into stone, they were seeing some of the most advanced effects of the 1950s. But those wonders weren't created by Paramount alone. DeMille secretly brought in Disney's top animators, the same artists who had worked on Fantasia and other classics. Using layered animation and live-action plates, they gave the plagues and miracles a supernatural glow no one else could achieve. Their contribution was never advertised, but it lingers on screen. Every burst of fire, every shimmering letter, carried the touch of Disney magic hiding behind the Bible's grandeur. And while Disney's artists gave the film its miracles, one weary extra accidentally gave the set its biggest laugh at DeMille's own expense. 6. DeMille's bald head joke. Cecil B. DeMille ruled his set with iron authority, his booming voice echoing across the desert. Extras feared him, but one slip of the tongue broke that spell. During the exhausting golden calf sequence, a frustrated extra muttered, "When will that filthy bald old man let us break for lunch?" Her voice carried farther than she thought, right into the microphones. The crew froze, expecting DeMille's wrath. Instead, he grinned, lifted his megaphone, and thundered a single word, "Lunch." Laughter rolled through the set, a rare crack in the director's stern image, and in another moment of humor and heart, the film captured a scene that included a very special infant, Charlton Heston's own son. 5. Baby Moses was Heston's real son. The tender image of baby Moses drifting down the Nile is one of the film's most iconic scenes. But that wasn't just any infant in the basket. It was Charlton Heston's 3-month-old son, Fraser. Between takes, Heston cradled his child, both actor and father caught in a strange blend of performance and reality. The boy had no idea he was part of a Hollywood epic, but his cries and movements added a genuine humanity that no hired baby could have matched. Years later, Fraser Heston would return to Hollywood as a writer and director, but his very first role came without a line floating down a painted river, unknowingly cast as Moses himself. And while that Nile scene carried warmth, the golden calf sequence would demand nothing but endurance, nearly breaking the extras who danced through it. 4. The Golden Calf Festival exhaustion. The golden calf sequence looks like unrestrained chaos, dancers, drums, and wild frenzy spilling across the screen. But behind the scenes, it was one of the most grueling shoots of the entire film. Hundreds of extras were crammed together under scorching lights, forced to repeat exhausting dances take after take. Costumes stuck to sweat-drenched bodies, tempers flared, and the noise was deafening. The shoot dragged on for 3 relentless weeks. By the end, exhaustion turned bitter. Some extras collapsed, while others joked darkly about what it would take to escape the picture. The orgiastic energy you see on screen was no act, it was desperation captured on film. And yet, amid all the heat and exhaustion, the strangest chill came later when a mysterious white figure appeared in the desert, then vanished without a trace. 3. The mysterious white figure on set. In the middle of filming in the Egyptian desert, some crew members noticed something strange. A lone figure, dressed in flowing white robes, stood silently on the horizon. At first, they thought it was an extra or a misplaced stand-in. But when they looked again, the figure was gone. No footprints, no trace, just whispers spreading across the set. Some swore it was a ghost, others called it a guardian spirit watching over a sacred story. DeMille never explained it, and the mystery became another legend woven into the film's history. And if that apparition unsettled the crew, the next revelation blurred the line between prophet and God himself, because the voice from the burning bush belonged to someone very familiar. 2. God's voice was Charlton Heston. When Moses knelt before the burning bush, audiences heard the deep, commanding voice of God. Most assumed it came from an anonymous actor chosen for his gravitas. In truth, it was Charlton Heston himself. His lines were recorded, then altered in pitch and echo until they sounded otherworldly. DeMille wanted the voice to feel both divine and human, as though God was speaking through Moses' own soul. It was a bold, creative choice that gave the scene an eerie intimacy. The prophet and the Almighty became one voice, blurring the boundary between man and deity. And while Heston thundered as both Moses and God, hidden in the crowd was a young man who would one day become a legend in music. Fact 1. Herb Alpert's cameo. Amid the frenzy of the golden calf scene, dancers, drummers, and chaos swirling in the desert, one background player went unnoticed. He had no lines, no credit, and only seconds of screen time. That young man was Herb Alpert. Years before founding the Tijuana Brass and becoming a music icon, he appeared as an uncredited drummer, pounding out rhythms for DeMille's spectacle. It's a blink and you miss it cameo, but history makes it extraordinary. From the dust of Pharaoh's court to the top of the music charts, Alpert's journey began in the shadows of a biblical epic. And so, from collapsing directors to popcorn hailstorms, from ghostly apparitions to music legends in disguise, the 10 Commandments proved that even behind the camera, miracles and mysteries were everywhere. From DeMille's near-fatal collapse to a cobra on the loose, from hail made of popcorn to a ghost in the desert, the 10 Commandments wasn't just a biblical epic, it was a production filled with miracles, accidents, and secrets that still echo through Hollywood history. Nearly 70 years later, its power hasn't faded. The parted Red Sea, the thunder of plagues, and the sheer ambition behind it all remain a reminder of how far filmmakers were willing to go to turn scripture into cinema. If you enjoyed uncovering these hidden stories, and you feel we've earned a pat on the back, don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow classic movie fans, and subscribe to Golden Hollywood Archives. Here, the past is never silent. It's alive, waiting to be rediscovered. Do you have any other Hollywood classic you'd like us to research and cover? Let us know in the comments below. Now check out our other videos, you absolute legend.